If someone ever timed you standing on one leg or watched you get up from a chair and walk a few steps and told you that's your falls risk sorted, I need you to hear this. New guidelines published this year say that tests doesn't reliably tell you anything about whether you're going to fall. I'm Gail, the falls coach, and if you've been with me for a while, you know I've spent years telling champs that a quick checkup moment isn't the same as knowing your real falls risk. This week, that got backed up by the people who write the actual medical guidelines. And I want to walk you through what changed because it changes what you should be doing next. And that's starting today. Let me start with what happened. Earlier this summer, NICE, the body that sets clinical guidance, published an update on fall prevention. Buried in the detail is a sentence that matters enormously if you're over 65 or you're caring for someone who is. They now say doctors shouldn't rely on these quick risk prediction tools on their own. And that includes the timed get up and go test, the one where you're asked to stand from a chair, walk a few paces, turn around, and sit back down while someone watches the clock. For years, that's been treated as a decent shorthand for, is this person at risk? The guidance now says it doesn't reliably predict what actually goes on to fall, who actually goes on to fall. I want you to sit with that for a second because I think a lot of people have been quietly reassured by tests like this. You do the walk, you're not obviously wobbly. Someone nods and says, you're fine, and you go home and think, right, that's dealt with. But being able to get up and walk across a room isn't the same as, let's say, having the strength and balance reserves to catch yourself when your foot lands on, let's say, the wrong part of a curb, or you turn quickly to answer someone calling your name. Here's the honest part, though, and I'll always give you this bit. I'm not saying that those tests are pointless. They can flag an obvious problem. What I'm saying, and what the guidelines are now saying too, is that a pass on a 30-second test is not the same thing as a low risk of falling. The two things have got muddled in people's minds, understandably, because a test feels definite. A number, a time, a tick in the box. Real risk is messier than that. It's about strength. You can't see from across a room. It's about how quickly your body corrects when it's thrown off balance, and that doesn't show up in a walk and a turn. So what does the new guidance actually recommend instead? For anyone who's had a fall in the last year, or who has a noticeable problem with their gait or balance, it says they should be offered a structured fall prevention exercise program, not a leaflet, not a one-off appointment. A program over time that builds strength and balance deliberately. I think about a client of mine, Terry, when I read this, because Terry came to me the way a lot of champs do, a bit shaken after a stumble, more worried about the next one than the last one, and honestly, a bit embarrassed to be asking for help with something as basic as standing up straight. We didn't start with a test, we started with a plan, built week on week, the same way you'd build up to lifting a heavier shopping bag or climbing a longer flight of stairs. That's the bit a snapshot test can never capture because it's not measuring a moment, it's building a capacity. Think of it like your car. You wouldn't judge whether the brakes will work in 6 months by pressing them once today and having them respond fine. You'd want them serviced, maintained, checked over time. So your balance is exactly the same. A single test tells you about right now. It tells you nothing about whether you'll have the strength reserve when it actually matters, on a wet pavement, in a rush, carrying something in both hands. So, here's what I want you to take from this. If you've had a fall in the past year, or you or someone you love has started to feel less steady, don't let a quick test be the end of the conversation. That's exactly the moment the guidelines now say a proper exercise program should start. That's the whole idea behind the Fight Back Falls formula. Not a one-off check, but building your strength and balance deliberately, week by week, so your body has something in reserve when it's tested for real, not in a hallway with someone holding a stopwatch. So if this is the first time you've heard me, hit subscribe, because I put out content like this every week to help you and the people you love stay steady and stay independent. And if you want to know exactly where to start, I've got resources linked below to get you going. Because at the end of the day, this was never about passing a test. It's about still being the one who gets down on the floor to play with your grandchildren, who walks the dog without a second thought, who makes the memories you're not willing to hand over to fear. So let's keep building toward that together.